Hey, it's Dan, and in this video we'll replace the battery on this Ural GearUp motorcycle. Just like most other bikes, the battery is located under the seat, so we're going to remove the side panel, remove the seat, remove a couple of more brackets to gain access to the battery, and then put everything back together. Check out the video description below for a link to the replacement battery. So the first thing we'll do is remove the seat. I'll start by unscrewing the two bolts under the rear fender. To do this, you'll need a 5mm hex bit. Next up, we'll remove the side panel to get access to the battery and to the front attachment point for the seat. This is a view of us looking up at the bottom of the seat, just in front of the battery. You could see the 17mm lock nut that we'll need to remove in order to remove the seat. This allows us to remove the seat, and next up, we'll remove the seat bracket using a 5mm hex bit. With the seat bracket out of the way, we can now remove the battery bracket using a Phillips screwdriver and an 8mm box wrench. Now that the bracket is unscrewed, we can remove it. Just be careful not to touch the battery terminals. And finally, we can disconnect the battery terminals. You always want to start by disconnecting the negative terminal first. The reason for that is it's connected to the chassis. So if you were to start with a positive terminal and then accidentally touched the frame with your tool, you would cause a short. And with the negative terminal disconnected, we'll now disconnect the positive terminal. You might have noticed that I have a bunch of extra wires in a black box under the seat. Those are for some of the accessories that I've installed on this bike, so you probably don't have to worry about them in your case. Now, the battery on this bike is a tight squeeze, and the clutch cable can get in the way. But squeezing the clutch moves the cable away from the battery and gives us a little more clearance. So what I like to do is to zip tie the clutch lever to the bar to keep it out of the way and make the battery removal easier. And now we can jiggle the old battery out of the bike. It is a tight squeeze, so just be patient, take your time. And the new battery will slide in the same way that the old one came out. With the new battery in the bike, the next step is to reattach the battery bracket. Here you also want to take your time and make sure that the bracket latches onto the hook that's on the battery base. And here we'll reattach the screw and the lock nut. And now we're ready to reattach the battery terminals. And the order here is super important. Make sure that you start with the positive terminal first for the same reasons that I mentioned earlier. You definitely don't want to cause a short here with your new battery because it could damage it. And once the positive terminal is connected, we'll connect the negative terminal. Next up, we'll reattach the seat bracket. And now we'll reinstall the seat. Take your time to get it aligned first, and make sure that the front bolt slides into the hole that's in the seat bracket. Once that's in, we're going to hand start the two rear bolts first because it's easier to do that before the lock nut gets tightened. Now in my case, the two rear bolts were getting rusty, so I replaced them with some stainless steel bolts. You can check out the link in the video description for the ones that I bought. And as I mentioned, it's easiest to get the two rear bolts started by hand first, then tighten the lock nut, and then finish tightening the two rear bolts. And finally, we'll snap the side cover back on. Be sure to take your time and make sure that it's aligned with the frame.